European diplomat Federica Mogherini has congratulated Prime Minister Rama for a job well done on justice reform and the fight against drugs. To restore land to its former state, agricultural expert Dots Faslia advises immediate drainage of land and enrichment with organic fertilisers. Ilir Meta and Alta Jajka praised the contribution of the armed forces in establishing Albania as a state, welcoming the government's decision to increase their budget. Good evening, it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 5th of December 2017. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for the English edition of Aura News, bringing you the day's national top stories translated into English 6 days a week. During his visit to Brussels, Prime Minister Rama was able to hold a meeting with the European Union's Chief of Diplomacy, Federica Mogherini. Mogherini congratulated the government's work on justice reform and the fight against drugs and said that this work will help Albania advance in the opening of negotiations. Welcome again, Prime Minister Rama, for an important moment in Albania's path to the European Union. Under the leadership of Rama, Albania has done a great job, especially on the reform of justice and the fight against drugs and corruption. This is a task that we fully support and needs to continue, opening the way for further steps into the European Union integration, said Federica Mogherini. The Prime Minister thanked Mogherini for the assessment and promised that in the coming months, Albania will have even more positive results than now. It is a pleasure to meet you. We are trying to get positive results for all of our efforts and to start with accession talks. I'm very proud because we are achieving good results and we will have more positive results in the coming months, said Rama. During his visit to Brussels, the Prime Minister also met with the President of the Council of Europe, Donald Tusk. Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, Ditmir Bushati, believes that Russia's role in the Balkans cannot compete with that of the European Union. In fact, quite the opposite. It could indeed be a hindrance. In an interview with the EU Observer, Bushati stressed that the Balkan countries prefer the European model. Russia cannot compete with the EU as an attractive example for the Western Balkans. It could even play a barrier role. I am not aware of any policy pursued by any of our neighbours that may put a question mark on their EU membership process, such as a special partnership with Russia or special treatment from Russia, said Ditmir Bushati. Talking about integration, Bushati said the Albanian foreign policy has always been in line with that of the European Union, while alluding to Serbia's good relations with Russia. We've never allowed ourselves to sit in two chairs, said Ditmir Bushati. Bushati does not deny the scenario of Russia's intervention and involvement in a dishonest game in Macedonia, where statements against the European Union are often produced. Russia has been very active with our neighbour, coming up with political statements on the Macedonian crisis more often than the EU, said Ditmir Bushati. Earlier, the minister participated in the conference on the high expectations for 2018, underlining that Albania feels encouraged by the strengthening of support for the Western Balkans enlargement, as recently expressed by European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, and as well as French President Emmanuel Macron. Democratic Party MP Yorida Tabaku said that the government data on employment and the economy are pure propaganda. Unlike the figures that the government has published, Tabaku says that in the past 4 years, only about 30,000 citizens were employed. Government data on unemployment and economy are just propaganda being delivered during the flood times. It is simply not true that in the first mandate of the government of Rama, 260,000 new jobs were opened. Referring to Instat data, which is an institution reporting to the government, the number of new employees in the last 4 years is only about 30,000. In other words, only 1/10 of Rama's electoral promise was fulfilled. This is yet another indicator of an economy that does not move, said Yorida Tabaku. Tabaku said that during the governance of Rama, there were only 2 strong growth indicators. During Rama's governance, there are only 2 strong growth indicators: taxes from 90% of Albanians and the strength of the informal economy, where the money of drugs, crime and corruption circulates, said Yorida Tabaku. Tabaku added that today the country faces 2 undeniably unfortunate facts: that 300,000 Albanians left Albania and that, according to the World Bank, 60% of all employees are informal. Field crops such as wheat and barley and also seasonal vegetables have suffered significant damage as a result of recent floods. There were about 10,000 hectares of land underwater, while agricultural policy expert Ndots Faslia says that it will take several months for the land to return to its previous state. Professor Faslia says that the first step for farmers once the water has retreated is land drainage and enrichment with organic fertilisers. Farmers need to drain their lands after withdrawal of water, said Ndots Faslia. Regarding the reasons and causes for the floods, Professor Ndots Faslia noted the lack of drainage infrastructure while appealing for an analysis to be conducted on the effectiveness of investments. The recent floods significantly affected the Vlora and Fier areas. In addition to the considerable damage to agricultural crops and livestock, many families also suffered damage to their homes. The dense rains that caused the floods constituted twice the amount of precipitation that fell during the floods of 2015. According to the Institute of Geosciences, some areas saw an additional 30% more rainfall, but in areas where the floods were the most severe, the amount of rainfall was double compared to that of 2 years ago. According to Metodi Marku, a meteorologist at the Institute of Geosciences, this large amount of rainfall also led to increased water flow into the streams and creeks, which therefore led to some rivers exceeding the containment of their natural beds. If we compare this period to the period of 2015, the amount of precipitation this year is between 30% and 100% higher than the amount of precipitation 2 years ago. This created great difficulties for our rivers, which were unable to cope with such a large amount of rainfall, spilling water out of the riverbanks. Rivers in the south and also in the centre of the country overflowed from their natural beds, said Metodi Marku. As for the next few days, Marku says that there will be a slight increase in temperatures with low-intensity rainfall expected at the weekend. In advisory of the upcoming weather, Marku had this to say. Regarding the coming days, we expect to have no precipitation until Friday evening. This morning was 2 to 3 degrees colder than the previous days, but Wednesday will bring an increase in temperature which will continue into Thursday and Friday. The densest rains were received in the centre and the south of the country for 2 days in a row, resulting in the water levels of rivers exceeding the capabilities of the river beds and causing flooding in Vlora, Fier, Foscroy and other cities. The efforts by the majority to elect a temporary prosecutor after the end of Adriatic Lala's mandate are considered by the opposition to be illegal. DP MP Oerd Bulukbashi told the media that only the High Council of the Prosecutor's Office can determine the end of the Prosecutor General's mandate, an institution that has not yet been established. Only the High Council of the Prosecutor's Office determines the termination of Lala's mandate, stated Oerd Bulukbashi. Regarding his election, Bulukbashi again stressed that it is the Constitution that decides how the new prosecutor is elected. It depicts a process of election by 84 votes, not by 36, as the majority claims. According to the Democratic MP, the majority seeks the removal of Lala as a way of prematurely closing last month's corrupt affairs. They want to catch the prosecution in order to close the files, said Oerd Bulukbashi. The purpose of selecting this provisional prosecutor, according to Bulukbashi, is to capture this institution and bring it under the control of the majority party. After allusions by the Albanian media reporting on the possibility of monetary compensation for Albanian asylum seekers who would accept the voluntary return to Albania, German embassy insists that the truth is different. In a statement given by the German embassy in Albania, it is said that no further financial support or monetary assistance will be taken into consideration for the return of asylum seekers whose asylum applications have been rejected. Germany has categorised Albania as a safe country of origin, meaning asylum applications from Albanian citizens as well as from other Balkan countries are processed through accelerated procedures and are virtually rejected in all cases. Refused asylum seekers must return to Albania and may be punished with a ban on entry into the entire Schengen area for a period of up to 5 years, especially if they refuse to leave of their own accord and are returned to Albania by force. In just the last 2 weeks, over 300 Albanian asylum seekers have been returned to Rennes Airport by the countries France and Germany alone. President Ilir Meta has called the armed forces a strong foundation stone in the forming of the Albanian state. At the ceremony of the 105th anniversary of the founding of the Albanian army, the head of state welcomed the government's decision to increase the budget for the armed forces. The armed forces' sublime sacrifices in protecting the nation deserve our honour, said Ilir Meta. Minister of Defence Olta Jajka praised the courage and determination shown by the armed forces despite the zigzagging nature of politics. The armed forces are always ready and engaged in the fight against terrorism, said Olta Jajka. That's all for our English edition this evening. My name is Alexandra. Please join me again Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m. for your local news in English. On behalf of Aura News, thank you and good night.